Guys, this is really annoying. Nat and I recorded an amazing introduction, and we just lost the footage. So it's awkwardly just me right now. So yeah, today we're talking to Dr. Megan Cavell and Dr. Jennifer Neville of England. Today's conversation will be focused a lot on the Exeter Book, this thousand-year-old Old English codex with hagiographies, poems, and riddles. They specialize in the riddles, specifically riddles 5 and 15. So yeah, I wish this intro was a little bit more, but hope you enjoyed the conversation. It's pretty cool. Dr. Cavell, Dr. Neville, thank you so much for joining us today. How about we start with some introductions of yourself and your general area of research?
I'm Megan Cavell, and I'm Canadian, but I live in the UK. I've been working on Old English for, I don't know how many years. Many years now, let's say over 10. And I work a lot on riddles with Jenny, who's here as well.
I'm Jenny Neville. I'm also Canadian, but living in the UK. I don't know, it's just a coincidence, I think. Not all Canadians end up in the UK. I've been working on riddles for about 400,000 years, approximately. And I can show you. I just got this yesterday. This is my new book. Look, it's got my name on it.
Yay!
And it's all about riddles, and it's very exciting. And look at how beautiful it is.
Oh, we'd love a copy.
Pretty expensive, I'm sorry. Yeah, but it's at University of Toronto, so it's not that far away for you guys. You could, it's just up, just north of you, right?
Oh, well, road trip. Okay.
Yeah. What else can I say? Oh, I'm at a little university called Royal Holloway, which is just west of London. It's part of the University of London. What else? Yeah. I do nature stuff, and Megan does animals, and so we just sort of naturally sort of came together because we have shared interests, and the riddles was one of the big things that brought us together.
I think we've been working on riddle stuff together for, it feels like 10 years. I don't know what my own timeline is. But yeah, Jenny and I worked together on a project which the Riddle Ages website sort of came out of. It sort of existed before, but then it has a life of its own too. And we were working on Latin riddles as well as Old English. So we've actually sort of moved into multilingual stuff.
So I'm curious, how'd you guys meet and start your research together?
Well, we actually met because there's this big conference in Leeds every summer. And people come from all over the world. There's thousands of academics come and present work in progress conference papers. And I ran a session when I was a PhD student on riddles, and Jenny had been running sessions on riddles for years. And she sort of took me aside and was like, hey, maybe we should do something together, which I think was a very polite way of saying, don't step on my toes.
Get out my stuff.
But she's lovely and didn't say it like that. So then we started running these sessions together and having people come in and talk about riddles. At that point, I think I was working a lot on the Exeter Book riddles. So the Exeter Book is this 10th century manuscript, which is all Old English poetry. It's one of our 4 main collections of Old English verse. And I was working on what's called in modern editions Riddle 15, because modern editorial titles are boring. And it's about this fox or hedgehog or porcupine or badger. There's no solutions in the manuscript, so you get to guess, who is protecting her young from this predator that's coming for her. And that was what I was working on when we sort of first met, but I've gone off into other animal directions since then. But Jenny, you go first and say what you're working on.
What do you mean? What am I working on? I said, I'm done. I've written my book now.
What's your book about?
Yeah, Marco asked what we've done together. We've published those sessions that we did at Leeds, with all the people doing papers on them over a course of years. We've brought them together into a book. There's a collection of essays about riddles. So that's one thing we've done together. And we've also we've got one article out on a guy named Boniface. Dates for Boniface, 8th century. Yeah. He's a really important bishop guy in Germany, and he wrote some riddles too, but in Latin. So we've written an article about that. We've got another article on that coming out soon. So that's some work that we've done together.
We know you've done a lot of work on Riddle 15 together. Maybe we could jump right into its possible answers, solutions, and kind of your opinion about it as a whole.
Pausing real quick here. Dr. Cavell and Dr. Neville are now going to read Riddle 15 out loud. It's really cool how they emphasize certain words and how it sounds at the end. We encourage you, regardless if you're fluent in Old English or not, to try and compare to modern English, or better yet, any other Germanic language. The beauty behind its sound is amazing.
Hals is min skit on hever felo sidan swa soma.
Swift ich am on feather, bear weapon bearer.
Me on batcha standeth, her swilche sway on chlerum.
Lufieth two eren over Ergum.
Ordum ich steppe in grene gras.
Maybe jeren wittod, yif metch on hella an on findeth, while grim wiga, ich witch buga, bold mit Bernum, und ich biedeth mit jägath knossla. When a gast kuma to durum minum, him bith death witte.
Fordon each shell of erla ervaran mina, fort mod fergan, flema, nergan, yif he me afterward elas wertha. Hinne bereth breast.
Ich his bidan neder, wraithus on Jeruman, nellathat rad tela. Ac ich shall from liche, feather mundum, verk stepne berg strata wirchen.
Eða ich me frera, verch je nergan, yif ich maborg mot, mina je ladan, on degola way, verdune thurl, swaze on je sibba. Ich me sipan ne verf, while helpless we wicht on sitten.
Yif se nithshetha nerwastia me on swatha secha. Ne tosaleth him on tham yen patha, guth yemotas. Sithan ich thurch hulas throf yaracha. On thurch hest thrino, hilde pilum, laugh ye winum. Something it's longer flech.
So that's one of the longer riddles in the Exeter book. We have some that are just like one line. This is at the longer end, if not the longest. Is it the longest, Jenny?
No. I mean, riddle 40 is over 100.
Oh, of course, of course.
And riddle 20 is over 30 lines long. So this one's
okay.
I think this might be the next one. Yeah.
I think it's one of the longest animal riddles. It starts with, my neck is white and my head dusky, my sides just the same.
I am fast on my feet. I bear a battle weapon.
On my back stands hair, likewise on my cheeks.
2 ears tower over my eyes.
On spears I step in the green grass.
Sorrow is ordained for me. If someone finds me hidden, a slaughter-cruel warrior where I inhabit a house, a dwelling with my children, and I remain there with my young family when the stranger comes to my doors, death is ordained for them.
Therefore I must carry my children out of the homeland, frightened at heart, defend them by flight. If he pursues me at all afterward, his breast bears him.
I do not dare await his cruel nature in the room. Good advice will not require that. But I must boldly, with walking hands, produce a path through a high hill.
I can easily defend the lives of the precious ones if I may lead my kindred on a secret track through a hole in the hill, the near and the dear ones. Afterward, I do not need to concern myself at all with a slaughter whelp's attack.
If the evil enemy on a narrow trail seeks my path, he will not lack a war meeting on the hostile path when I reach through the hill's roof and ferociously strike with battle spears the loathed foe from whom I have long fled.
Yeah, so now I would ask you what the solution is if I hadn't given the options away. What do you think it is?
I don't know, maybe like some sort of scrappy mammal.
Oh, I mean, it could be a beast, but I was also thinking a rabbit with the towering ears.
Towering ears, yeah. As soon as I hear towering ears, I think, yep, that's a rabbit. And also just the sense of being pursued, right? I mean, that's rabbits' lives, right?
Yeah, but rabbits and hares are not the same animals.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Go for it. Tell me why it's not a rabbit when it's a hare instead.
Well, rabbits burrow, but there were no rabbits in early medieval England because they were brought in by the Normans. So it could be that they've heard of this animal and they wrote it in Old English. There are other riddles that clearly are like drawing on sort of knowledge from outside of England, but this feels like a riddle that's observed the animal in question, I think, anyway. So could it be a hare? I don't know. They don't burrow. They live in grasses.
Marco, you didn't seem convinced by hare. What else do you have in mind?
No. I just think the way you use history and that sort of knowledge to narrow down the options, it's fascinating. I'm still stumped. Maybe a ferret?
No, I mean, weasel has been suggested. scholar wrote up an article about why it must be a weasel.
The thing about the weasel that's good is that like in earlier sort of medieval stuff, there was like this opposition between snakes and weasels. And that line where it says his breast bears him, I mean, that's like a snake on his belly going after it. And so that makes sense to say that the enemy of the voice here is the snake. But the thing that doesn't work well for the weasel is the whole burrowing thing.
Yeah.
Weasels are good up in trees and stuff. They're not so good at digging holes.
Maybe some of you have answers, but at this point in the conversation, we were pretty stumped.
We then referenced the walking hands line because we thought maybe there was something there, and Dr. Cavell got pretty excited.
The Old English word, sorry, I can't contain myself, because the Old English word is fethamund, which is a compound word, and it means feet hands or walking hands. And I once, when I was researching this, I spent a long time on the internet looking at pictures of porcupine and hedgehog hands because they have digits. So they look very much like hands, not feet. They have a different number of digits on the back and front feet. And that word is what made me think, okay, porcupine, hedgehog. There's a very good article by a scholar called, oh gosh, I forgot his name now. Winfried Riddle. Oof, don't tell him. Oh no, it was Bitterly. You're right. It's Dieter Bitterly. Sorry.
I was going to say, there's a very good article by Megan Cavell about it too, isn't it?
No, there isn't. Dieter Bitterly is the article I was thinking of, about kind of books of classical knowledge, so books from the classical period about natural history, that describe a porcupine shooting its claws at dogs that are chasing it. And they absolutely had this kind of natural history in England at the time. So the fact that there are no porcupines in England isn't so much a problem because they might have been reading about them. And again, I kind of think that there's an element of observation in the poem. It feels very like in the moment, observing this animal protecting her young, but you know, it's literature, so maybe they use their imaginations. So yeah, and it could also, hedgehogs and porcupines, they thought they were basically the same animal, and porcupines are called the bigger eel, is the Old English word, and hedgehogs are the smaller eel. So they think they're the same animal, and they did have hedgehogs. But that's not actually what I think it is anymore.
You've changed your mind.
Yeah.
I was just kind of wondering, when you guys were reading that beautiful Old English translation, did you guys come up with that translation yourself, or had you built upon the work of previous people? How much linguistic infrastructure was there before you guys came in?
Yeah. People have had their paws all over this for 150 years, right? So people have translated them, but that was our translation. We translated that for ourselves. Because I think, I mean, with any kind of literature, you have to read it in the original language. A translation is a kind of new production, and good translations trying to bring something out of the original that's real and true. But obviously you lose some things and you add some things. So that, as I said, it had been translated before. I don't know how many translations we looked at, probably quite a few. We've read articles about it as well, but that was the translation that we came up with.
And we would have looked up all the kind of key words in the various Old English dictionaries to see what our options were. And then there's the element of picking you're making choices. So you're picking the right translation you think for building a particular solution potentially, but also you're thinking about it as a poem. So you want it to sound nice in translation too. Certainly, you're at the early stages of working with Old English. It's absolutely fine to be reading lots of things in translation. And then, as you learn more and more Old English, you can look at specific bits of it and try to work those out on your own. All academics look at translations too. I usually, how I might skim read a novel that I'm teaching to my students. I would treat reading translation sometimes as a kind of quick skim read of a text and then think, oh yeah, this is a text I want to work with, so now I need to go and translate it myself properly.
So a couple months back, we were speaking with the lionized Dr. Robert Fulk about alliteration in Old English poetry. Dr. Fulk says that when he translates, he really places the value on alliteration and the overall sound of the piece. When translating, how do you guys retain the original alliteration and overall tone of the piece?
I think we're happy when we can get the alliteration, but we don't hold ourselves to it, because modern English is kind of impoverished compared to what they had in Old English. They had so many beautiful synonyms and things, so that they had lots of words that they could put together that alliterated with each other. We just don't have that kind of poetic resource anymore. We have different, modern English is pretty good at words, but it doesn't have the same kind of poetic resources that Old English does. So if we can get the alliteration, then we like to have it, but we don't hold ourselves to translating with the alliteration in.
One of the things I like to do actually is I like to keep poetic compounds if I can. So putting two words together, and that's one of the ways they might get alliteration in, is if they put these two words together and this word, there's lots of different options for it. Then if I use this compound, this element to the compound, then it will alliterate with another word in the phrase. So there's weird poetic compounds like feathermund, walking hands, or feet hands, but then there's also just like a million words for warrior that you can compound up. So I quite like to keep poetic compounds if I can, and it makes it sound a bit archaic and weird when you read it in modern English, which I like.
Relatedly, a bit ago we were looking at Dr. Rachel A. Burns' analysis of Riddle 13. Basically, she thought it was a flock of sheep as opposed to 10 chickens, and she got to that conclusion by looking at the specific numbers and letters, really zooming into all the contents of the poem. Similarly to how some people look at the Bible, really inspect it for hidden meanings, do you guys ever employ this tactic when looking at riddles?
We read really, really carefully. But it's one of those things, is what game is this particular text trying to play? And one thing that was a big thing in my book, actually, about the riddles, is that this collection doesn't play fair, right? So that there'll be some riddles that are playing one game, and then the next riddle, and you think, oh, I got it, I know what they're doing. Then the next riddle is playing a different game, right? So when you approach a text like this, you're sort of going, it's trying to catch me out. So you got to pay really close attention, but then you don't know whether it's going to be about consonants, and you don't know whether it's going to be about, numbers. And you just have to try and work it out, because that's what the texts are. They're tests, right? They want to see, how good you are. And so we're alert to those possibilities, but they don't always play the same game. And that's why Rachel Burns's article is so interesting. It's because people haven't tried to do that with that text before.
Yeah, so some of them are more puzzles, and other ones are more poems. I personally like the poemy ones more. I'm a close reader at heart. I love poetry. And so those are the ones that I tend to gravitate towards, but there are definitely some where it's sort of playing with runes and swapping out words for runes and things like that, or a number game. And yeah, I just tend to not work on those ones. Jenny has worked on all of them.
Not finished yet.
So in the Exeter book, there's no answer key. And I can only imagine that there's some hopefully polite academic discussion and disputes that go on over these riddles.
It's not all polite.
There is some polite discussion. There's some less polite.
I was just saying, it's not all polite.
Yeah.
Not everybody plays as nicely as you and me, Jenny.
No, that's right. But this is, again, I'm not going to trumpet my book all the time, but this is exactly something that I've written about at length. My appendix for my book is called The Argument Over Solutions, and it is 40 pages long, where I've listed all the different arguments that people have made for all the different solutions, right? So, or at least all the ones I could find. I hope I haven't missed too many. So the point is that people have been arguing about it for a long time, usually politely, not always.
I was also kind of thinking, right, like in the world of Exeter Book riddles, there's probably some sense of divide and conquer, right? Like this is Dr. Cavell's territory, this is Dr. Neville's territory, we won't mess with Riddle 15. Do you guys ever work together as a whole in the field of Exeter Book analysis and compare answers, try to find a string of answers that maybe leads to another answer, try to find trends within any of the solutions?
I don't think anybody's able to claim any rights over any of these poems. People will write about my stuff all the time, and that's fine. But yes, there's some parts of the thing where there definitely seems to be a sequence. So there's a group of them which seem to all be about birds, and sometimes what'll happen is some scholar will write just a fantastic article, and that'll set people off and say like, that's a great idea. What about this one? What about this one? And then you'll get sort of a series of articles where people are building on previous scholarship.
So we know from previous club discussion about the Exeter Book and the riddles within that there are distinct themes of solutions, like animals or tools or whatnot. So could you tell us a bit more about this and how it relates to your work?
Oh, I mean, there's so many topics covered by the Exeter Book. So Jenny works quite a bit on the natural world. So she might look at the first riddle or riddles, depending on how you number them, which is all about sort of storms and wind and things like this. So that would be natural world, but not an animal. So I'd be like, Jenny, you have it. I'm going to work on probably a fox, actually, is the solution I like for riddle 15 these days. So yeah, but then that's just like in the natural world. Then there's loads outside of that, rakes and all sorts of human-made objects and things like that, plows,
spears and swords and shields and
battering rams, everything.
Except it's not a shield and it's not a battering ram, but that's what people think they are.
Yeah.
I mean, last year in our club, we did this amazing game where we printed out 5 or so different riddles and had members of the club try to guess the answers. And surprisingly, we normally had at least one person who guessed similar to the alleged answer. But people really enjoyed doing it. I also gave it to some of my English teachers, and they spent hours going over the poems. Overall, it was really cool to see how a 1,000-year-old riddle still stumps people today and entertains them, too.
I think they're supposed to be something that you work over. I mean, think about the context of the Exeter Book and all written literature at this point is, it's a monastic activity. It's monks who are writing these down. This is a collection that was bestowed to Exeter Cathedral Library by a bishop. But some of the riddles are pretty saucy and you have to think why. But no, it's because going over riddles and fixating on different clues and doing that kind of intellectual exercise, it's a form of rumination. And rumination is it's a highly valued monastic skill, because that's how you read the Bible. So I think you're supposed to look at them really closely and carefully and revisit them, but it also makes them really fun because you can also twist yourself all around. You can say this is the correct answer one day and then change your mind the next day, and you can never prove it because there's no answer key, like you said.
Yeah, I can see how this would turn into an obsession pretty quick. I think it seems cool.
Yeah, guilty as charged.
So I guess turning away specifically from the Exeter Book, and this is a question specific to Dr. Cavell, we saw that you researched arachnophobia. This really caught our eye. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this?
That is, of course, one of the animals that I'd worked with. I have a real fear of spiders, which has been visited upon me during house spider season here in the UK, which is happening now. They're all coming in and they're big. And I thought, write what you know. Why not try to cure yourself by going to the British Library and reading those really terrifying medical manuals with pictures of bites and enormous poisonous spiders, of which there are none in the UK. They're not poisonous. And I can't actually remember what I wrote about, which primary texts I used in that. I remember looking a lot at, as I moved past the Old English material into Middle English, looking at this tradition called the physiologus tradition, which means the natural historian. And we have it going back to the 2nd or 3rd century in Greek, and then in Latin, and then in lots and lots of different languages. We have it in Middle English. So just, a couple centuries after the Exeter Book. And the spider in the Middle English physiologus is just demonic. She's very, very Shelob from Lord of the Rings. Like, there's some intense hatred of spiders going on in that poem. So that was what drew me to this idea of talking about arachnophobia. And then I think I connected it up to the Old English poem Judith, where there's this weird scene where Holofernes, who's this biblical tyrant, general who's trying to invade Judith's home, he has this fly net around his bed, which is just a translation of like a mosquito net in the Old Testament or in the Apocrypha, the sort of non-canonical Old Testament in Latin. But there's all these other Old English examples of putting fly and net together, and it's a spider is the one who creates a fly net. That's what the web is. So I thought maybe Holofernes is a bit of a spidery bad guy. which is probably a bit of a stretch, but the Middle English poem is intense. So I do highly recommend looking at that as well. Slightly easier to read than Old English too, which is nice.
What's the Old English word for spider, Megan?
Lobe is one,
Mhm.
and loppe. Oh, atterkoppe, of course, poison cup or poison top, which is a word that Tolkien uses in both The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, certainly in The Hobbit.
The word I
What's
was
his
looking
name?
for was Weferganga.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Wafragenga, so the weaver walker, the one who weaves and walks.
Spider, yeah.
There's actually lots of words for spider in Old English, which is another reason I wanted to work on that particular animal.
So these many varieties in what is now one singular word, does that stem from it just being a massive language, or is it a regional dialect thing?
I think it's a big language. I mean, some of these are compounds again. So Wafra Ganga, weaving goer, weaving walker, that's a compound. Ator Kopa, poison cup or poison summit or top, that's another compound. But they're not being used in poetic context where we might expect compounding. So I think it's, and they don't appear very often. So maybe it is regional. I don't know. All of our Old English that survives, or the majority of our Old English that survives, is in the same dialect because that's who wrote it down. But that doesn't mean it didn't circulate before it was written down in other contexts. I don't know. I don't know why there are so many words for spider and yet so few like narrative examples of them. They come up a lot in medical texts. They're afraid of spider bites even though they're not poisonous here.
Maybe you could finish up with how about a few rapid fire questions? What got you interested in Old English?
I had a good teacher. I got to university. I'd never heard of Old English before. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do English, I need to know all of English. So I signed up for this course, and he was just great. And that was it. I was hooked. So it was just, what's this stuff? And turned out to be really good.
Middle English first, and then when I got into the Old English class, because I really liked that, I had Jane Toswell, who's just an amazing person.
Favorite Old English riddle?
Riddle 5. I have 10 solutions for it.
Chopping board, isn't it? Mine's Riddle 15, but I don't want to be a broken record. So I like the storm wind riddles at the beginning of the whole slew of riddles. I think they're really cool. They're long, they're intense. The natural world is powerful.
I know both of you guys give some lectures here and there. So how do you teach your riddles in your Old English? What's your format?
What's my format? I have a whole course on it. I got 10 weeks. So I guess what my strategy for that course is, I want my students to come up with their own creative translations of the riddles. So that's how I teach it with them. Is I tell them things about farming because you need to know about the natural world and the historical context there. But what I want them to do is to create their own things. So some of my students, I had one student who made this beautiful illustrated book about swans, for example. And so that's my strategy for teaching riddles there, is to ask the students to make things in response to the text.
And I don't teach riddles very much at all. I teach on my Old English course. We look at some of the manuscripty riddles and riddles about speech and about writing as a way of thinking about the surviving corpus of Old English. So we look at the book moth riddle, which is like a bookworm that eats the manuscript. And we look at the nightingale riddle, which is about performance and speech and song. That's it.
So I guess any messages to young aspiring Old English learners and anybody who's listening to the podcast?
Do it.
It's fun.
It's fun, yeah.
It's very rewarding. It's not as hard as learning other languages because there are these little echoes of modern English in some of the words. Read it out loud, you can hear that more. And just keep it up. It is really fun. You can always read things in translation.
The riddles are great fun. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. The bell, I'm sure maybe you heard it rang. So we're already into the next period, but it was truly a pleasure meeting with you, and we got a lot of takeaways to work with after meeting. Yeah.
No, nice meeting you. Yeah. Good luck with it.
Yeah. Have fun with it.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah. Everything we learned about riddles was pretty cool, but the whole arachnophobia thing, it blew me away.
I'm all of a sudden inspired to solve some riddles.
Let's get cracking. In the meantime, please leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It truly helps us reach more people and grow our mission. If you have any questions or remarks, please leave them in the comment section below.
See you soon. But for now, whiz hal!